All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian from Trade Market Group, and it is Wednesday, April 20th, and this is your end of day recap. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Make sure that you go ahead and read through the whole risk disclaimer, but everything that we're talking about is for information purposes only. My voice is a little screwed up. I am sick. I've been sick for the last couple of days, so bear with me. This will be a short video, but just wanted to talk about some of the price action and some of the things that we're seeing in this market, which I view as very interesting. This market has been, continues to be very interesting, and depending on how you play it, and yeah, and we'll talk about what's working in this. I try, especially for members, when we talk about in our weekend videos, when we talk about we do a macro video and I do a watch list video. And one of the things that I've been talking about or stressing the last couple of weeks is sticking with areas of the market that are working, right? If you've been watching my videos for a while, I'm a trend trader. I don't really go into names that are in downtrends, right? I really believe that the price action is correct. The trend is correct, right? And instead of trying to come up with a view or thinking that you're going to outplay a name, because you think it's cheap. I view that the price action is forward looking and telling you most of what you need to understand, right? So of course I'm going to talk about Netflix. We could talk about a couple different names. We'll talk about Tesla as well, and then we'll talk about what I traded today and what I've been trading. And it is what it is. This is the second time that Netflix has gone down on earnings. And, I see a lot of people that are kind of stunned by this. And, I did not have a position in Netflix. I didn't play it to the short side on earnings, but there's a couple things in here, right? And we've talked about this over and over. And I know members have heard me talk about this over and over, but once names break their trend, break the 200-day moving average, that's it for the name. Like the name is changing has changed the personality of what it is, right? And I think some people think that the name has gotten cheap, right? There's a reason why it's not in an uptrend any longer, and there's a reason why it's showing relative weakness, right? And that should be a clue to get out of the name. So I could recommend all the books, to read on this. Trend Following by Michael Covell is the best book to read about this. But, there's a lot of traders that, not just myself, that have adopted a trend following type system because it keeps them out of this, right? And we've seen this with so many names over the last 6 months, even more than 6 months. How many names have you seen that have broken the 200-day moving average and have done something like this, let's say after the first earnings? How many have you seen that have come back and have had a V recovery from that point? You probably either can't think of any, or you may have probably on one hand, you could come up with names that have recovered, right? It is just very difficult. For something really has to change with the company for it to recover that quickly. So, another one that we see after hours right now is Carvana. What has the Carvana chart been telling you, right? This moving, and maybe if I use the weekly chart, it might help a little bit more, right? But something changed with this thing, right? Big move up. And once it breaks, it breaks. All right. And especially when you look at the, and again, this is a lot of things that I repeat over time, but I'm not a big valuation person. Right. I'm more of a technical person, and I use, the chart to help me trade and know when to get in and out of positions, right? Based on support resistance. Right. But from a valuation standpoint, many of these names have been trading at big multiples. Not all of them. Like I think Netflix has probably lost that huge multiple at this point. But when you're talking about, the valuation that is way higher than normal, in my opinion, it's fine when these things when there's a good story and when they're moving in a trend, but once they break, they really break, right? And you're seeing that just play all over the place. So, the other thing that's in play here too is just a massive trend too, that not only just in individual names, but we've talked about this several times. You've heard me talk about it over and over. Sorry if I haven't said that enough in this video, but if you look at the relationship between, and I think that you could look at this in growth versus value as well. But if you look at this trend that's been going on for a long time, energy versus tech, and you bring this out to like a 10-year relationship, right? This is telling you a lot. Right? This is how long. So going back to 2014, energy has massively underperformed tech, right? But notice what's happened here the last couple of years, the last year and a half, I should say. So now we can zoom this in a little bit, right? Is that there has been a change in trend, right? And this is what energy stocks. And again, this is just energy, but I think it's the same story for material, for the metals and mining. And a couple of the other groups right now, right? They're the ones that are right now are trending, and the ones that are not are, things that are now being broken down a bit. And, so one of the things that we keep mentioning is monitoring for changes. Eventually, and I don't mean to group all growth stocks, because I don't think all growth stocks are bad, but you're definitely seeing more names get kind of taken out. So Tesla is a good example. This is something that I said in the trading room today, is that Tesla, I wasn't expecting Tesla to go down a lot on earnings, even though that there was a bunch of fear in the market today, on Tesla's results, because Tesla's not a streaming company, right? And the other thing that I've alluded to too is that, look at what's going on with the hotel names right now. Now Marriott is off the highs a little bit, but people have different preferences, right? All of the hotel stocks are almost all, I shouldn't say all of them, but there's 3 or 4 of them that have broken out to new highs. So things change, right? And I think watching the 200-day moving average, watching the trend, watching the price action is going to tell you all that you need to know. Now it's nice to kind of be clever too and be able to spot some other things, but the price action is telling you enough of what's going on. So you could come up with a million reasons why Tesla has been trending down and so on and so forth, but the price action has been telling you that it's in a downtrend and that it was not to be played with. The other thing that we talk about a lot too is the earnings history. And we went over this yesterday. But if a name has repetitively poor earnings, right, that's also a trend to me, right? So 35% went down 21%. Look at how many times they've gone down on earnings, right? And when we looked at Tesla today, it was more back and forth. I didn't think Tesla was a good name to go long or short. And I thought actually my idea was to sell, put spread in a call spread and try to collect premium, right? But I did not trade it. I think there's better opportunities right now, either going into earnings. So let's talk about some of those. So I wanted to kind of move over to some of the areas that have been trending. I tell you, I'm very impressed with what's going on with the medical devices. They were amongst the best performing groups today. They were also strong yesterday, but I think this is one of those groups where you have to kind of go and you have to pick some names, right? It's not as strong as the materials, the mining, the energy, and some of them still have earnings to report. So Boston Scientific is going to report earnings, so that's what makes it difficult right now. And Edward Life Sciences has been very strong, right? But all these names have to report earnings, so I would be mindful of that. ISRG is also going to be an interesting report. All right. So what did we do today in the trading room? So that's just, that's one sector that I think is interesting. And I definitely get interested in some of these groups. But I thought what was also interesting was that what has been strong, right? And this is what people were doing a couple of years ago, right? Is that they were buying the dip, right? But in names that are in uptrends. Right. So for now, that's what I'm doing in areas like we just have talked about, but agriculture, coal, uranium, obviously the energy. And I think you had a number of these things that are pulling back. So again, there's plenty of things. And again, the market right now is going overall sideways. right? So some names are going down, some names are going up. That's not an all or nothing market right now. So CCJ was a nice trade in the trading room today, right? Costco, which was a trade I put on yesterday, right? Took some profits, right? And that's what I did here in the beginning of the day. Palo Alto was a little bit of a fake out today. So, I always, on big strength, on a big opening strength, I always take profits. So still holding the trend, but I did get my target at 640. And this one, I've been patient with this one. Also paychecks, so again, this is, a nice pullback into the 20-day moving average, name that had good earnings, ran up into earnings, had good earnings, right? That to me is, a nice opportunity. And then it's kind of with all those names, because I did see a lot of those groups pulling back. I chose CCJ. You had your pick, right? Depending on what you wanted to go into. I also, I like CF is one of my favorite names in the agriculture space. This did not get back to positive on the day, but was down like 2 or 3%. And it's a support, and at the end of the day, right, eventually this will stop working, right? The buying the pullbacks in uptrending areas, but every trade has a stop price. So I know exactly where I'm going to be wrong, right? And my stop price for CF was, right, stop is 101.50, inside the value area, right? So that's how I use the value areas to help me trade, right? Using volume at price is that, and then there's so many other areas too that people are just not paying attention to. And I get it. They're not as sexy as a MyFace or Facebook. But here's residential REITs, right? And you could pick 3 or 4 names within this group, but consolidation, and move higher. Again, remember, as a retail investor, you don't have to stay stuck in FANG stocks or whatever, or any other downtrending stocks. Nobody's telling you that you have to do that, right? You pick what you think is the right thing, right? That's the beauty of this market. That's the beauty of being a retail investor, right? You don't have to keep buying these, even though these are not really innovation stocks. They just call them that, right? Most of the stocks that are in this ARK Innovation ETF are anything but that. But this is continuing to break lower. This broke value. So again, these are trends, and you're doing yourself a world of good if you're just staying out of these names and areas of the market that are continuing to make lower highs and lower lows, downtrending. Right. So again, as our job as trend traders is not to pick the top, not to pick the bottom, just to basically avoid downtrends and capitalize on uptrends. All right. Was there anything else that I wanted to cover here? Talked about a couple of these, couple other names too that look interesting. Like a Juniper looks interesting. Again, very tough because these names are going to have earnings, right? But there are some tech names that are doing okay. IBM had a good day. Not exciting, but all right, guys, that's it for today's video. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.